The rain had been falling since morning, washing the color from the little town of Bramblewood and leaving everything in shades of grey. At the edge of town stood a lonely railway station, old and wooden, where time seemed to move slower than anywhere else. The paint had peeled from the benches, the clock above the ticket counter had stopped working years ago, and the air always smelled faintly of dust and damp iron. On one of the benches sat a girl, young, quiet, her clothes soaked at the edges, her fingers curled around a small brown suitcase. Her name was Alara. She had been waiting at the station since sunrise. No one knew exactly when she had arrived, or where she was headed. The station master, an old man with a soft heart and stiff back, had asked her once, "Train running late, miss?" She had simply smiled and said, "I'm waiting for someone." That had been hours ago. The trains came and went, carrying businessmen, soldiers, lovers, and strangers. But the girl remained. She sat beneath the flickering yellow light, her eyes fixed on the far tracks as though the very horizon might bring her answer. The townsfolk had begun to notice her. A few whispered stories of their own. The baker said she must be waiting for a lover who never returned. The tailor thought she looked like someone who had lost her way. But Alara didn't speak to anyone. She just waited. By noon, the station had grown busy. The 12:05 from Winton arrived with its usual rush, the hiss of steam, the echo of footsteps, the chatter of passengers. Among them was a man named Henry. He was tall, wearing a brown coat and carrying a briefcase that looked like it held more burdens than papers. He noticed her instantly at the girl on the bench, motionless amidst the movement. Something about her felt familiar, though he couldn't place it. He hesitated, then approached. "Miss, are you all right?" She looked up slowly, and for a moment, he saw something infinite in her eyes, something like hope, something like grief. "I'm fine," she said softly. "I'm just waiting." He smiled politely. "Trains don't usually run on time here. You might be waiting a while." She smiled faintly, too. "I've been waiting for a long time already." He didn't know why that made his chest tighten. Perhaps it was the way she said it, and not with impatience, but with quiet faith, as if the waiting itself was sacred. The loudspeaker crackled. Another train was delayed. Henry sighed and sat on the bench beside her. "You waiting for someone?" She nodded. "Yes, someone who promised he'd come back." He tilted his head. "A friend?" She hesitated. "Something like that." Henry smiled, half to himself. "I used to wait too." "For whom?" she asked gently. He looked out at the wet rails. "For a woman, years ago. She said she'd meet me at the station, right under that clock." He pointed to the broken clock that still showed 3:17. "She never came." Alara's eyes softened. "Did you ever find out what happened?" "No," he said. "I stopped looking at her a while. I told myself she must have changed her mind." She turned to him, her voice low. "Maybe she didn't. Maybe something stopped her." Henry met her eyes, and for the first time in years, felt the sting of something he had long buried, the ache of unfinished goodbyes. A whistle blew in the distance. Another train passed through, but Alara didn't move. Her gaze followed it until the last carriage disappeared. Then she whispered, "That wasn't the one." Henry chuckled softly. "You sound like you know which train it will be." "I do," she said. "He told me it would come when the sky clears." Henry glanced up. The clouds were thick, the rain still falling. "Doesn't look like that'll happen soon." Alara smiled faintly. "It will." He didn't understand her, but he didn't need to. Something about her calmness quieted him. He stayed beside her until his own train was called. As he rose, he said, "I hope he comes." She looked up and said softly, "So do I." Hours passed. The station emptied. Evening crept in, painting everything gold and blue. The station master came by with the lantern. "Miss, you'll catch your death out here," he said kindly. "I'm all right," she said again. He said he'd come when the rain stops. The old man sighed. "Been raining since morning. Best not to hold your breath." But Alara didn't move. When night fell, she took out a letter from her suitcase, old, creased, edges torn. She unfolded it carefully and read it for what must have been the 1,000th time. My dearest Elara, if the war ends and I am still breathing, I'll come for you. Meet me at the station, the one where we said goodbye. Wait for me, even if it takes a while. I'll find my way back to you. I promise. It was dated 10 years ago. Elara's fingers trembled slightly, not from cold but from memory. She could still see him, Thomas, in his uniform, his hands rough and warm around hers as he boarded the train that day. The smell of smoke, the sound of his voice saying, "I'll come back." He had never returned. The letters had stopped after that one. People told her to move on, to forget, but she couldn't. Something in her heart refused to accept that the story had ended without her seeing him one last time. So every year, on this same day at the anniversary of his departure, she came back to the station, and waited. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air was still, heavy. The rain slowed to a drizzle. For a moment, the clouds thinned and a single beam of moonlight fell across the platform. Elara looked up, eyes wide. Then she heard it, faint at first, then growing louder. A whistle, the sound of a train. But there was nothing scheduled at this hour. The station master frowned, stepping out of his office. What in God's name? The tracks began to hum. Through the fog came the shape of a train, old-fashioned, black with silver edges. Steam rising from its engine. It didn't look like any of the modern ones. It looked like something out of another time. The train slowed and stopped right in front of her. Its windows glowed faintly, though she couldn't see anyone inside. The station master blinked. That a broken bar, that can't be right. There's no night train due till morning. Elara rose to her feet. Her heart pounded. The door of one carriage opened with a soft creak. A man stepped out, tall, in a faded soldier's coat, his hair damp from mist. For a second, the world went silent. "Thomas, a broken bar," she whispered. He smiled, the same smile she remembered, the one that had kept her heart alive all these years. "You waited," he said, voice gentle as the rain. Tears filled her eyes. "You came back. I told you I would." The station master watched in stunned silence as the girl ran to him, and the two embraced under the faint glow of the platform light. "You were gone so long," she whispered. "I thought I'd lost you." "I tried to come back," he said softly, "but the world changed. It took me a while to find my way." He looked different, older, but somehow unchanged. There was something ethereal about him, as if he wasn't fully part of the world anymore. "Elara," he said, taking her hand, "are you ready to go?" She hesitated. "Go? Where?" He smiled faintly. "Home." The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of lilacs in her mother's garden, from long ago. For a moment, she felt warmth spread through her chest, a peace she hadn't felt in years. The station master called out, "Miss, where are you going?" "That train's not on any schedule." But she didn't hear him. She was looking into Thomas's eyes, and in them, she saw everything at their first dance, their first kiss, the life they never got to live. He held out his hand. "Come with me." And she did. As she stepped onto the train, the world around them seemed to shimmer, the fog swallowing the platform. The door closed gently. The train whistled once more and began to move, slowly at first, then faster, until it vanished into the mist. The station fell silent again. Only the rain remained, soft and endless. The station master stood frozen for a long time. When he finally walked to the bench, he found the brown suitcase still there. He opened it, curious. Inside were a few faded letters, a pressed flower, and a photograph of a young man in uniform, standing beside a smiling girl at the station. On the back, in delicate handwriting, were the words, "Until we meet again." He sat there for a long time, holding the photograph, wondering if he'd imagined the whole thing. Then he noticed something. The air felt lighter, the rain had stopped, and the broken clock above him, which had read 3:17 for years, now ticked softly to 3:18. The next morning, the townsfolk found the old station master still sitting by the bench, looking thoughtful. When they asked him what happened, he only smiled and said, "She finally caught her train." And from that day on, whenever the fog rolled into Bramblewood Station, some swore they could still hear a whistle in the distance say and see the faint image of a girl and a soldier standing together on the platform, hand in hand, waiting no more. Years later, the station was shut down, the rails rusted, the benches were taken away, and nature claimed what was left. But travelers who passed the old site sometimes said they felt something, a warmth, a peace, as though love itself lingered in the air. And if you stood there on a rainy evening, when the wind was right, you might still hear her voice whisper through the mist, "I waited, and he came." Because some promises, no matter how long it takes, are never broken. And love, the kind that survives wars, time, and death, always finds its way home.